It's been about a year and a half since I started building the Pantheon of Azeroth series with my first god, Ashra. While that build is still special to me, I believe I've grown as a builder since then. Now, as much as I want to be able to attribute that to my own personal growth and development, I also think there's an even better explanation. That is the expansion of building tools, specifically tools such as Axiom and Easy Edits. So in today's video, I want to go over how these tools have helped me create the newest entry to the Pantheon, Caellyn, Goddess of Holy Wilds. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Pantheon of Azeroth build. Today I'm making Caellyn, the Dryad Goddess of Nature. Caellyn as a goddess was unique amongst the Pantheon, for she was venerated by both mankind and elfkind alike. As I have mentioned previously, the humans and elves of this world have had a tumultuous relationship, but Caellyn, in part, represented the bond they once shared. Here's a little tidbit of behind-the-scenes info I haven't shared before. For each of the gods, I made a couple of quick sketches just to give me an idea of what I want to be doing with the build beforehand. Depending on the build, the final product could be quite different from the sketches, but I find it a helpful exercise regardless. As I had mentioned earlier, I've been using the Axiom mod quite a bit recently, and as anyone who uses Axiom for organics can tell you, the tools available are very powerful compared to what came before. Here I sculpt her antlers. I'm going for an exaggerated fantasy look with them, so I make these large swirling patterns. For her eyes, I went through several iterations to get it to look the way I wanted. I started with these cat-like eyes, but they looked a little too jarring. I then temporarily switched to these irisless eyes similar to Ashra's eyes. I then decided to put off the eyes for later. Having made the antlers, I move her up to max world height so I can take advantage of every last block. I finish up with the smoothing before making my way to her clothing. As a Dryad goddess, Caellyn's clothing is actually a living material made up of layers of protruding tree bark. These wooden layers stem from this tree trunk attached to her spinal cord. This may look a bit odd right now, but it should make sense in just a moment. Here I make her hair out of individual leaves. I try to give a little sense of movement to the leaves as if they were blowing in the breeze. Hey, that almost rhymes. After taking a break from the eyes, I decided it's time to work on them again. This time I go for eyes with darker scleras before switching to more human-like eyes. I feel like I'm almost there, but not quite. I finally figure out the eyes I want by lowering the contrast. I do this by hiding it behind a layer of lime-stained glass. Somehow this gave them a bit of a Mona Lisa effect where they seem to look at you wherever you are, which I thought was kind of neat. Here I work a bit more on the wooden clothing. This is where things start to get wild. The other gods wield more traditional if elaborate handheld weapons. Caellyn, however, is a bit of a mold breaker in that her weapon is a symbiotic exosuit. Yeah, you heard me right, this goddess has an exosuit, specifically one made of a tree. For inspiration, I was looking at two dryads from fantasy fiction that I like, Drisha from Warhammer and Ren from Magic the Gathering. Ultimately, I settled on a design that's fairly inspired by the latter, with external arms that mirror what her arms are doing. To make the tree arms, I copied each of Caellyn's arms and turned everything but the hands into black stained glass. I then made a bunch of root growths mimicking musculature. After finishing up with the arms, I paste them into place and connect them with more root growths. From the frame of the tree suit, I make some large branches. I then make some smaller branches to the side, but realize they're still pretty big, so I split them up into smaller branch assets and paste them all over. Here's where Easy Edit starts to come into play. I use the scatter brush to paste in the branch assets semi-randomly over the frame of the tree. I then make a single leaf and use the scatter brush once again in a similar fashion for the leaves. Once again, I use the same method to paste these flower blossoms all over her antlers. At this point I realize that it looks like her hands are performing some kind of motion, but there isn't any context as to what she's doing. I decide to make it look like she's channeling a will-o-wisp or something of that nature. For the wisp I use a similar technique to the flames from Valrock, except a little less fiery in nature. I then make an orb in the middle. To give it the look of a nature spirit, I scatter some of the leaf assets from earlier as well as some blossom petals. Here I start working on Caellyn's temple. I decorate the cylinder by making a pattern inspired by Yggdrasil using the Axiom Symmetry tool. I also make a deer head in the middle. I make some terrain with the Archeon boulder brush. Don't worry Arcaniacs, I haven't forgotten about you. I then made this Celtic-inspired knotwork pattern to circle the base of the temple. It took me a bit to get the hang of this. Now it's finally time to start texturing. I mostly use the Easy Edit's texturing commands with a little bit of Axiom's auto shade. While I did have to do a little bit of manual shading on top of this, I almost feel like this is a little too easy. I think the hardest part here was finding a good skin tone for her that was a little green but not overwhelmingly so. Here I touch up some shading on her skin as well as make some glowing green tattoo markings. Texturing the base of the temple took several tries to get right, but eventually I got it how I wanted it. For her temple, I knew early on that I wanted a somewhat Stonehenge aesthetic to it, so I made these 8 stones floating around the sides of the temple. I ended up not liking how it looked as I felt I wanted more sharp, angular stones for the temple. I end up taking some inspiration from Shovel241's video where he made these huge pylon stones with the rings in the middle. I start with a design that is a little too similar to Shovel, so I end up ditching the rings. I come up with the idea that each of the 8 stones will have a different animal head on it, sort of like a totem pole. The animals I use are a bear, a wolf, a cat, an eagle, an owl, a deer, a ram, and a bull. I also decide that each stone could use its own unique pattern, with each one based on the animal it represented, as well as being loosely based on cultures that live near the animal. I make some cracks in the stones to represent wear and tear. After each stone was complete, I angle them and paste them into place with their respective animal heads. I give each stone a quick texturing and paste them into place around the temple. Now it's time to work on the temple. Each of the previous gods have a player scale component to their respective temples, so I need to implement something here as well. I decided to make 2 additional layers of platforms that partially circle the base of the temple, connected to each other with stone pillars. I then mirror the design to the other side. It's even harder than last time getting a texture I like here. Now I add some frog lights to light up the temple. I also add some steps so that the player can get to the upper platforms. To finish up the temple, I add a worn down path leading to the entrance. I also add a stone dolmen gate to frame the entryway. I make this little tree growing off the side of the gate. After texturing the terrain, the build is just about finished. But wait, something is missing. Surely the goddess of nature shouldn't be the only god not to have an animal companion. Now I build Gwyn, Caellyn's trusty heart. I use the same deer head from the stones to make Gwyn's head. I contemplated making him larger, but unfortunately there wasn't much room to scale him up. I finished this build by giving Gwyn some texturing in some spots as well, and now the build is complete. Big thanks for making it through the video. As usual, the download link is not available as of making this video, but I'm still considering making a Patreon, so if you like my builds and want them to be available one day, for now just keep supporting my channel and stay tuned.